Easterwood Airport had never been designed to host global intrigue. This tiny regional hub, tucked away in College Station, Texas, normally saw the ebb and flow of university students, retirees with carry-on bags of memories, and the occasional oil executive heading to a meeting in Houston. Its slow, routine rhythm was shattered one mild afternoon earlier this year when the airport unexpectedly became the stage for a scandal that would reverberate all the way to Buckingham Palace, shaking the royal corridors in ways no one had anticipated. At the centre of this storm was one woman and one deceptively ordinary handbag. Eyewitnesses would later describe the scene as surreal, almost cinematic. Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, arrived solo, stripped of the usual entourage, no private jet in sight, no bodyguards flanking her. Gone were the sharp suits of red carpets and Hollywood premieres. Instead, oversized sunglasses hid her gaze, a simple, understated travel outfit masked her presence, and she clutched a leather carry-on that seemed fused to her hands. She looked composed at first, though weariness tugged at the edges of her posture. That composure, however, shattered the moment a security agent politely requested she place her bag on the table. What followed was not the kind of chaos that people could laugh off. No screaming or flailing. It was worse. Absolute silence. Her hand hovered, knuckles whitening on the strap. For a heartbeat, she seemed frozen, caught in some invisible negotiation between pride and fear. With slow, reluctant precision, she finally set the bag down. Then the routine inspection spiraled into something far more consequential. The officer requested a manual search. Meghan flinched, not theatrically, not for show, but enough for everyone present to register that something was deeply amiss. And then came the tipping point. A shaky phone lens captured the exact instant the bag was opened. What at first appeared to be a bulky portfolio tumbled out, but as seconds ticked by, the truth revealed itself. These were no ordinary travel documents. Printed emails, some heavily redacted with black bars, typed letters, frantically annotated in aggressive red ink, and at the centre of it all, a faded, yellowed envelope frayed at the edges with a wax seal barely holding. The instant it emerged, Meghan's veneer cracked. She lunged for it, hands shielding it with urgency, voice rising as security urged calm. The tension was tangible. The short clip, barely 60 seconds, was uploaded online by a student waiting for a flight. Within hours, it went viral. Hashtags like #EasterwoodEnvelope and #MeghanMysteryDocs ignited like wildfire across social platforms, and then, almost as suddenly, it vanished. Erased. DMCA notices flooded platforms, accounts were suspended, but the internet never forgets. Speculation raged in encrypted chats, private forums, and rumour-laden threads. What was in the envelope? Legal documents? Personal grievances? Or something far darker? Theories ranged from the bizarre to the ominous. Some claimed it was evidence for a tell-all lawsuit. Others whispered of classified royal secrets. But what truly captivated observers was not the content. It was Meghan's reaction. Once media-savvy and untouchable, a woman who outmaneuvered palace press offices and Hollywood tabloids alike, she had panicked. And not just a mild panic, the raw, immediate panic of someone caught with a secret in front of millions. Back in London, silence enveloped the gilded halls of the monarchy's inner sanctum. Prince William said nothing. To the press, to aides, to anyone. It was as if the clip did not exist. But insiders reveal that the moment he watched the footage in his office, he rose without a word. He summoned the Royal Intelligence Liaison, a discreet unit, rarely called for family affairs, normally reserved for matters of state. That single act revealed the gravity of what the video implied. What could possibly have been in that handbag to merit such a response? And why, of all people, was Meghan carrying it through a public airport? Questions stacked like bricks. Was this a trap she set? Had someone followed her? Was security tipped off in advance? Was this about control or blackmail? Sources close to British intelligence now insist it wasn't the documents themselves that mattered. It was her reaction. Analysts studied the video frame by frame. Micro-expressions flashed: panic, calculation, fear, defiance, all within 10 seconds. Her instinct to protect the envelope rather than the emails or red ink drafts revealed the truth. That envelope, palace sources later confirmed, bore symbols once used in internal royal correspondence, unseen since Queen Elizabeth's private communications. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about Meghan, it was about the crown itself. And it all began with a trembling hand on a handbag at a regional airport not built for royalty. The crown, with its centuries-old traditions and stone fortresses, had been breached by a simple piece of leather and a raw expression of panic. In that moment, the stage was set for a confrontation of two visions of power, one veiled in performance and emotion, the other wrapped in silence and duty. Neither side would relent. As the clip played on, Prince William did not blink. He did not speak. His private secretary dared not breathe. The only sound was the low hum of the tablet, casting Meghan's frozen figure in cold, pixelated light. Frame by frame, he absorbed every twitch, glance, and microbeat. His office, once a quiet retreat, had become a war room. William, hardened by the past year's crises, the cancer scare in the family, the Queen Consort's disgrace, Harry's self-imposed exile, was no longer the emotional older brother seeking reconciliation. He was now the absolute steward of a monarchy teetering on generational distrust and public fatigue. He understood instantly what the video meant. This wasn't embarrassment. It was a flare, a test of the system's perimeter. He adjusted his cufflinks by habit and gave one order: summon the liaison. No leaks, no press releases, no internal memos. The Royal Intelligence Liaison arrived in silence, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, no rank displayed. William slid the tablet toward her. She watched the clip, expressionless, and asked, "Do you want this handled quietly?" "Quiet," William replied, "but full depth. Every contact, every channel. I want to know what she has, where it came from, and who's involved. Assume nothing is accidental." Outside, London's spring sky darkened slightly, clouds rolling in with stately majesty, foreshadowing the storm yet to come. The ramifications were staggering. For months, aides had tracked anomalies. Private travel logs misaligned with public schedules, consultations with IP lawyers, unexplained shell donations linked to Sussex non-profits. At the time, these had seemed like red herrings. Now, the picture crystallised. Meghan wasn't merely reacting, she was manoeuvring. Behind curated interviews and public narratives lay a meticulously constructed campaign. William remembered Princess Diana's words: "Paper trails outlive people." Now, documents that could twist the crown's legacy were in the hands of a woman who had once walked Windsor halls with ducal confidence. The burden was his alone: to assess, to contain, and to answer for what could happen if it all unravelled. The liaison watched again, silently absorbing every detail. William's orders were clear: full investigation, no leaks, no panic. Outside, clouds thickened, darkened, and rolled over London. Inside, the weight of history, secrecy, and raw ambition hung in the air. One woman, one bag, one envelope, and a monarchy now standing on the precipice of revelation. The spring sky above London, darkened slightly, hinted at the gravity of what was unfolding with quiet majesty. Inside, William stood motionless, eyes locked on the envelope. He rewound the video, froze the frame, and zoomed in meticulously. Just at the corner of the fragile paper, a sliver of blue wax, torn as if it had once sealed a confidential file, caught his attention. The crest was unmistakable. It wasn't hers to carry, it wasn't hers to read, and it certainly wasn't hers to weaponize. The realization hit him like a punch: audacious, deliberate, dangerous. A wave of revulsion rolled through him, not directed at her theatrics, not at the inevitable victim narrative she might spin, but at the sheer gall of carrying those papers through international airspace as if they were trophies. Was this arrogance or desperation? He didn't yet know, but he would find out. And one thing was certain: the monarchy would not be leveraged, hijacked, or manipulated. Not again. Not by secrets buried by his grandmother, not by someone who had walked away from duty and still dared to call herself royal. The silence in London wasn't ignorance. It was the hush before a storm, a gathering of force behind stone walls, the kind of quiet that always precedes history, pivoting on its axis. By the time the first report landed on William's desk that evening, flight logs, contact traces, surveillance timelines, he had already made the quietest, most consequential decision of his tenure as Prince of Wales. This would not be allowed to fester into a full-blown scandal. He would end it before it even acquired a name. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Meghan had rehearsed this moment in her mind 1,000 times. Every gesture, every pause, every tone was calculated. If she was forced into a corner, she would not emerge defeated or dishevelled. She would emerge framed on her terms, with her narrative intact. Less than 48 hours after the Easterwood incident, Meghan Markle sat in a softly lit studio in Montecito. The backdrop was deliberate. Muted earth tones, soft linen drapes framing lush greenery, a cream armchair suggesting warmth and weariness in equal measure. No flashy jewellery, minimal makeup, a neutral blouse and subtle accessories. Her hair framed her face loosely, occasionally tucked behind an ear, a carefully choreographed gesture revealing vulnerability. The camera rolled, but this was no ordinary interview. No journalists, no questions. Just her voice, raw, controlled, devastating. "I never imagined," she began, her voice trembling just enough, "that travelling alone as a mother could lead to such a traumatic violation of privacy." She paused, moist eyes coaxing empathy. "They rifled through my personal belongings, my memories, the things I've carried, not to harm anyone, but to protect myself and my children." She didn't name Easterwood Airport. She didn't address the envelope directly, but the subtext hit like a bullet. This wasn't about documents. It was about dignity. Within the same hour, her video went live. Cease and desist letters poured into inboxes across the US and UK. Social media accounts that posted the Easterwood clip were hit with legal threats. Private forums scrambled to comply with takedown notices. Metadata in private chat groups was traced. The message was clear. Discussing the incident carried consequences. Yet, beneath the legal storm, a more subtle, strategic move was unfolding. Meghan didn't fight fire with fire. She fought it with feeling. She cast herself not as a duchess, not as a celebrity, but as a mother under siege, a woman seeking peace while pursued by invisible forces bent on breaking her. The psychological framing was masterful. In America, where images, currency, and trauma shape truth, her story resonated. Platforms picked it up immediately. Headlines shouted, "Meghan's heartbreaking airport ordeal" and "A mother's fear." Public sentiment, already fractured by years of divided opinion, began swinging in her favour. Celebrities shared hearts and prayers. Activist organisations released vague statements of solidarity. Hashtags like #ProtectMeghan and #privacy as power flooded timelines. She had flipped the narrative, and she knew it. Off camera, the woman behind the performance collapsed into the chair, but the moment of vulnerability was fleeting. Her eyes sharpened as she scanned engagement metrics on her phone. Each like, share, comment. A data point, a weapon, a shield. She wasn't celebrating. She was counting time. While her video reached morning newsreels, her lawyers worked quietly on a deeper level, preemptive injunctions. Their mission wasn't just silencing the airport security team or the student who filmed the clip. They aimed to pressure the Department of Homeland Security to classify the incident as a diplomatic privacy violation. Longshot statutes, but in lawfare, longshots could stall, delay, and buy power. Delay meant momentum. Delay meant public fatigue. Delay meant William might hesitate. But Meghan had miscalculated one thing. William wasn't playing PR chess. He wasn't playing at all. He didn't issue statements. He didn't leak counter-narratives to friendly newspapers. He simply observed the pauses, the spacing of breaths, the white-knuckled hands clutched so tightly. He saw the studio set up, almost identical to a therapist's office, and he understood her performance, not with cynicism, but with icy precision. Whatever was in that bag mattered enough for Meghan to risk everything to spin the narrative. Her media playbook was sophisticated, yet transparent. She never denied possession of the documents. She reframed them as personal, intimate, and wrapped them in vulnerability, daring the world to unwrap them. William saw the trap clearly. Push publicly, and she would claim persecution, retaliate, and she would claim abuse. Silence, however, was impervious. Silence could not be quoted, could not be edited, could not be twisted. It could encircle you like a noose. By the end of the week, Meghan's campaign reached saturation. Sympathy was real, yet whispers of skepticism crept in. Analysts noticed the uncanny speed of her response, the precise timing of production. The legal letters had appeared ready even before the incident occurred. She had built her war room in advance. One commentator observed, "It's almost as if she was waiting for something to go wrong." The first crack in her armour, doubt. And William knew once the audience started questioning the play, no acting could save it. Just after midnight, a motorcade arrived at Easterwood Airport. No sirens. No flashing lights. Unmarked vehicles glided silently into the back entrance. By the time security unlocked the restricted holding room, Prince William had already stepped onto the concrete, radiating a stillness that forced everyone to lower their voices instinctively. He wore a black overcoat, pressed slacks, and a plain grey scarf. No medals, no aides, no entourage beyond two operatives, shadows flanking him. There was no need for display. His presence alone carried weight. The room was sterile, steel table, harsh fluorescent light, a chill from industrial vents. On the table, untouched, logged and sealed, sat Meghan Markle's leather carry-on. Ordinary, worn, expensive, but to those who understood the stakes, it might as well have been radioactive. William didn't speak. Gloves removed from his coat pocket, donned slowly and methodically, every movement deliberate. He opened the bag, makeup case, travel journal, charger, cables, monogrammed wallet, then a black folder, initials MM etched into the corner. Inside, clippings and articles spanning years, critical of the royal family, some redacted, others annotated in crimson pen, email printouts, correspondences between PR agents, media strategists, legal consultants, tactical annotations that chilled him. This was no scrapbook. It was a campaign blueprint, letters stacked neatly, topics of isolation, financial grievances, media manipulation. Each ended with projected settlements in the millions. William's lips thinned, not shock, but recognition. He had seen this structure before, extortion dressed as empowerment, demand letters masquerading as moral crusades, and at the very bottom, the envelope, fragile wax seal partially cracked, a faded emblem once belonging exclusively to Queen Elizabeth's personal correspondence, never digitized, never photocopied, reserved for only the most sensitive internal communications. Meghan had one, and it had been opened. William's face didn't betray emotion, but inside something had shifted. Not rage, not fear, something colder, confirmation. William placed the envelope aside with careful deliberation and reached for the final layer in Meghan's bag. Photographs, dozens of them, printed, tangible, not digital. Each one seemed ordinary at first glance, but as he flipped through the stack, a chilling realization settled over him. Some were from before Meghan's marriage, others from the shadowed corridors of her time within the institution. But these were not the curated family snapshots or the smiling public appearances captured by royal photographers. These images were different, quiet, observant, dangerous. They showed Meghan in obscure locations, remote cafes, secluded streets in foreign cities, sometimes in rooms that appeared nondescript, but, to anyone trained in observation, screamed clandestine encounters. Across from her sat strangers, faces unknown, figures never listed on any royal itinerary, expressions unreadable, eyes calculating, movements precise. Each photograph was a story, a hint of ties, a trace of connections, a breadcrumb of a hidden network she had quietly maintained during her time as Duchess, and possibly even before it. William pressed the stack flat with his palm, the weight of the knowledge heavy. "These are not to be destroyed. Not yet," he said softly to his team. "But the letters," he gestured to them with a slight nod, "publicly purge. Remove them from circulation. Let her have no platform to lean on." He understood the psychology at work. If this campaign was about control, stripping away her materials would dismantle the illusion of leverage. Meghan's victim narrative thrived on perception. Remove the tools, and the power evaporated. But the photographs, they were something else entirely. These were not props for a smear campaign. They were insurance, a safeguard for survival, and that made them far more dangerous than anything else in the bag. William slid them carefully into a new envelope, sealing it himself, and handed it to his most trusted liaison. "Track everything tied to this," he said. 5 words that would ignite a quiet, ruthless investigation. Each photo, each shadowed face, each subtle connection was a thread. From threads would emerge files, dossiers, maps of networks hidden from the public eye, more detailed than any spin Meghan's media team could craft. He took one last look at the empty bag on the table. Once a symbol of elegance, it now sat exposed, a vault of recklessness. William felt no triumph, only resolute focus. This was no longer about scandal. It was containment, not just of a woman, but of the ripple effects capable of shattering an institution. Outside, the Texas night had deepened into indigo. He stepped into the waiting car, the door closing silently behind him, carrying the weight of decisions made in shadows. The war was not over. Meghan was not retreating. She was reloading back in California. The pressure had evolved. Less panic, more calculation. She had seen the metrics. The emotional play had landed. The Easterwood clip, scrubbed from most platforms, had bent the media cycle briefly in her favour. Her team executed the first wave with precision, but something was off. William hadn't responded. No press leaks, no statements, no anonymous palace insiders planting narratives. His silence wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. And Meghan, for all her training, for all her media savvy, knew one dangerous truth. You cannot control what remains hidden. You can only prepare for what might emerge. She doubled down. A second video, filmed at home, appeared online. Softer, warmer lighting, quieter voice. She spoke of resilience, of healing, of legacy. Vague, but laced with symbols designed to provoke empathy. Motherhood, mental strain, the fear of invisible threats seeking to silence the truth. A masterstroke of emotional misdirection. She wasn't speaking to the press. She was addressing the algorithm itself. Short clips, intimate cuts, soft piano underlay. Once again, the headlines followed. Markle breaks silence again. Healing or hiding. Yet cracks had begun to show. Social media users questioned her narrative. If the bag was personal, why fight so hard to bury the clip? Where was Harry in all of this? Questions multiplied. Meanwhile, William's operation escalated quietly but comprehensively. Not just photographs, but background checks. Not just names, but financial trails. Meetings with creative investors. Late-night visits to law firms registered in Delaware and the Caymans. Burner phone calls linked to figures in media, politics, and foreign consultancy. It was no longer about scandal. It was about network. Each document cross-referenced. Each name indexed. Meghan had connections she had never disclosed, deals whispered, promises made, leverage silently accumulated. She believed her tears and calculated vulnerability could sway public sentiment against the crown. She underestimated one critical factor. William had already found the web connecting it all. One image revealed a hidden bank account, another a consulting deal tied to an anti-monarchist fund. A third pointed to a Berlin meeting with a reputation disruption firm. Cohesive, circumstantial, but dangerous. William understood the stakes. No need to prove crime. The goal was credibility. Once the public believed the institution could be infiltrated and manipulated, the crown lost its last currency, trust. And so he remained silent. Quietly irreversible, meticulously strategic, access frozen, residual privileges revoked or reclassified, security protocols tightened, archival access re-evaluated, internal measures executed with precision. The final move was clinical. A sealed diplomatic packet delivered through back channels, not press, not public statement, to Meghan's legal team. A single-page official request from the British royal household demanding clarification on the Easterwood contents, voluntary disclosure, a formal apology for the disinformation campaign. No threats, No theatrics, only consequences that left no room for performance. Meghan received the letter in silence. She read it once, then again. Her fingers tightened around the page. Pride flared, the armor that had protected her for years, but beneath it flickered something else, uncertainty. Resolution had settled over Meghan, something she hadn't truly felt since the earliest fragile days of her royal experience. Fear. Yes, but not just the fear of public exposure, not merely the dread of tabloid scrutiny or viral judgment. This was a deeper, more intimate fear, the fear of being cornered, of seeing her carefully constructed world constrict around her, leaving no room to maneuver. And yet, in that fear, a choice presented itself. To comply would mean surrendering control over the narrative she had meticulously shaped for years, leaving her story in the hands of others. To resist outright would be to risk the palace unleashing everything it had quietly amassed, every file, every photograph, every trace of her movements and communications, against her. She weighed the stakes, the unseen observers, the invisible eyes tracking her every step. And then, after a long, measured pause, she chose neither path. Instead, she diverted, reshaping the battlefield into something she could manage, or at least appear to manage. Within 24 hours, a new campaign emerged, strategic and deliberate, a branded foundation, a children's initiative with staged photo shoots featuring carefully positioned smiles, media appearances on outlets sympathetic to her cause, interviews with friendly journalists, all designed to blur the lines of the conflict and distract from the lingering threat of the Easterwood incident. She created waves of positivity meant to obscure the contours of the confrontation, to diffuse tension into the public consciousness. But William did not respond. He did not engage with her maneuvers, did not issue statements, did not allow himself to be baited. He watched instead. Every new headline, every smiling photo, every calculated display of warmth became data in the ever-growing dossier resting on his desk in London, silently consolidating control and preparing for the moment when action would be necessary. Endurance, William knew, was the ultimate measure of power. The crown did not require applause, hashtags, or fleeting media attention. It required patience, calculation, and the ability to outlast the storms that inevitably come. Outside, the world surged on, distracted by elections abroad, celebrity scandals, and other fleeting dramas. Inside, however, the palace remained still, deliberate, and unyielding. For Meghan, that silence was tangible. It became almost a living presence within the walls of her Montecito estate. She had weathered storms before, tabloid lies, racial scrutiny, family feuds. But this was different. This was not a scandal to deny, not a narrative to counter, not a battle that could be fought with charm or deflection. This was a psychological siege, the quiet terror of uncertainty, the invisible hand holding the timing of the next move, leaving her perpetually off balance. Publicly, she flourished. Charity galas, meticulously photographed walks, interviews with measured warmth, all carefully choreographed. Her wardrobe brightened, her voice steadied, her gestures refined. On popular talk shows, she laughed with polished grace, her charisma intact. Yet behind closed doors, her environment had constricted. Staff were reduced, calls with advisors shortened, legal teams reminded daily that time was the only advantage left, not guarantees of victory. Every public moment became a performance rehearsed to perfection. Every document scanned, every shipment verified, every phone treated like fragile glass. Because the truth remained inescapable, the contents of that bag no longer belonged to her, they belonged to William, they belonged to the crown, and the crown never forgets. At Clarence House, William sat at his desk. The top-secret dossier lay open before him, thick with cross-referenced reports, surveillance imagery, and confidential testimonies, all sealed under lock and key. He spoke to no one, neither his father, nor Catherine, nor any aide. There was no need. He had the knowledge he required, not for vengeance, but for containment. The envelope from Easterwood, that original object of intrigue, now carried more power in shadow than it could ever have in the spotlight. It hovered above Meghan like a sword suspended, compelling recalibration at every turn. Her initiatives expanded, docuseries in development, a memoir whispered about, a second season of her podcast under discussion. She tried to overwrite the narrative, infusing every appearance with new emotions, new frames, new stories. Yet the audience, having glimpsed a moment of unguarded vulnerability at Easterwood, was no longer fully convinced. They watched with scrutiny, not blind empathy. The perfection of her performances, the exactness of her makeup, the deliberate timing of her gestures, the careful control of tone, began to work against her. Empathy had limits, and the rawness captured at Easterwood had revealed the precision of the choreography beneath. William's victory was never declared with words. It was measured, silent, and enduring. He allowed Meghan to unravel herself slowly, her own measures of control transforming into a cage. The palace executed a quiet restructuring, access to archives subtly revoked, communications rerouted, privileges internally reclassified. She felt the invisible weight of observation in every silent night, every unreturned call, every subtle signal. She did not know how much William knew. She did not know when or if he would act, and that uncertainty was more confining than any public trial could have been. Eventually, the press moved on. Easterwood faded into forum discussions, footnotes in the endless churn of headlines. Yet Meghan's life, though outwardly bright, remained constricted. The contents of that bag lived on in a file sealed under royal authority, carrying consequences far beyond her reach. William, for his part, felt no triumph, only clarity. Reputation can be built in months or days, but trust, once fractured, leaves a permanent fracture line. Some truths, when exposed, do not liberate, they annihilate. For now, the file remained sealed. The palace endured, the crown remembered. Meghan had been tested, measured, and constrained, not by scandal, but by the quiet, invisible authority of an institution that never forgets, that never overlooks, and that exercises patience as its greatest weapon. The subtle, inexorable lesson was clear. Power is not always about striking. It is sometimes about enduring, waiting, and letting the opponent's own actions define the boundaries of their fall. And in that silence, William had secured a form of victory that needed no headlines, no dramatics, and no public acknowledgement. It was quiet, it was complete, and it was irreversible. If you're captivated by stories like this, where power, strategy, and secrecy intersect behind palace walls, make sure you like this video, share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more exclusive insights into the hidden world of royalty and the games that shape history.